All right, just a little bit of yoga music here for this video. It's very short, I promise. Don't start with conclusions. So, every disagreement I've ever been in where things got personal and people started making ad hominem attacks, a term I learned actually from Dennis last miles, when people started attacking each other in their own personalities, boils down to starting with a conclusion. And I once heard somebody say, and I don't know who, very wise person, whoever it was, I can't remember where I read it, but they said pretty much all all anger can be traced to misunderstanding. And I'm really going to try to avoid the Yoda quote here, right? Hate leads to whatever, love is just suffering. Somebody's going to put it in the comments. I don't remember the exact quote, but anger starts, even before a Yoda thing. Anger starts from misunderstanding, and misunderstanding becomes offensive when you start with a conclusion. So the takeaway from this video is, if you want to avoid conflict at work or in your personal life, don't start with conclusions. Let me give you some examples. Microsoft sucks. Rust is for idiots. Anything that ends with sucks. How about that? anything that ends with sucks, right? If you and by the way, I put these things in my titles on purpose because they sell videos somehow. Totally stupid. I really hate that YouTube rewards argumentative, rant and hate inducing thumbnails and these little titles. But the title, the very nature of a title, which only is 100 characters, right? You can't spell out your argument and delineate all the reasons that Microsoft is a horrible company in 100 characters. So what do you say? Microsoft sucks. And then somebody gets on, they're getting all up, they get backfire effect because they like Microsoft or they don't like it, or Linux sucks, that kind of thing. And they don't, let me give you a very specific example. Okay, so Linus Does Tech, once upon a time, a lot of the people in the Linus, this is a very long story to get across a very short point. So if you just want to jump to the point is, don't start with a conclusion. Help the person come to your conclusion on their own. Then they won't feel attacked. They'll have an opportunity to disagree at the moment in the conversation where they might not be with you. And you both can identify that spot where you guys disagree. Right? And you can, oh, okay, well, I see your point there. Right? See what I'm saying? So, and there's one lesson I've learned the hard way. That is definitely it. So when I say things like NeoVim is shit and I hate Rust, people hear the conclusion and they get immediately offended. And quite frankly and quite honestly, I've done it on purpose because it's funny. I'm a bad person. You shouldn't do that. I mean, I'm still going to do it. It's hilarious. But then, at least I know that if I want to actually win someone over to my argument, that we need to, if you really care, you can't, by the way, you can't do this at work, right? I can do it in my live stream and in YouTube. So I'm not pretending to be a saint. I'm not a saint. I'm a fucking human being, and I swear and I mess up and I have fun with it and I say things suck and I laugh, and there's going to be somebody's going to be offended by that. And that's their problem. But if you truly don't want to piss people off, and if you want to try to seek understanding and you want to be zen about it all, the way to do that is don't start with conclusions. So everybody in Linus Does Tech was saying how much Linux sucked. And they're like, Linux is horrible. Oh my God, Linux is shit. Why would you ever use Linux? Why would you ever use the command line? Why we have graphics user interfaces. Why would you ever use the command line? That's totally stupid. Only boomers and old farts want to use that. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying in their chat. Why? Because Linus Does Tech couldn't figure out how to get the desktop, how to play games on Linux. And it was like blowing up in their face, and there were thousands of people, and they were all mad. And Linus was doing it wrong and didn't know what he was doing, and he was frustrated, and he started throwing Linux under the bus, saying, why would anybody bother with this? And the crazy thing is I actually agree with him. I'm streaming right now from a Windows machine for all the reasons that Linus Does Tech was having problems with. I can't play my Zwift game on Linux. The end. I spent 24 hours trying to get it to work, and there's a solid video on how I tried that and couldn't work because Linux isn't ready for desktop gaming. And I'm going to get hate mail just for saying that because why? Why am I going to get hate mail for saying that? Because I started with a conclusion. Linux isn't ready for desktop gaming. That's a very provocative statement that lands in a nice, happy title. Not happy. It's a clickbaity title. Linux is not ready for desktop gaming. Oh my gosh. That's going to get all kinds of views. Why? Because people are going to come in there to defend. And right. And the only way that you're ever not going to have people angry is by saying, well, let me share with you my story, which I'm going to, share. So I already shared Linus Does Tech, his story. In short, he tried to get Linux gaming work after blowing up his Linux machine and doing lots of stuff wrong and not understanding how the Linux command line worked or any of these things, and then asking a very honest question, why do I have to do all of this? I can just install this on Windows. It just works, which is actually a very, very honest question, right? But I was among, believe it or not, at the time, I was among the people that were like on him. And I actually immediately started streaming. I started streaming and I made a huge zet, which is now no longer there. I made a huge zet about just going off on Linus as being like a grifter and all this horrible personal attack against him. And it was absolutely horrible for me to do that. And I deleted it. It's funny because the guy who co-hosts with him, I don't even remember him, he came in because Linus started streaming me while I was writing my zet. Because I was frustrated and I was angry because I had been pissed off by all the people in that community, not necessarily him, but mostly looking back now, I was getting pissed off by the people in the community for saying Linux is a bad thing. And so I was going through that, and I was going through all of it, and I really sincerely was angry. I was angry, and I was like, okay, well, at least I can rant in my own Settlecast, and I can say that, whatever. And it did sort of placate my own feeling at the time. But then Linus started streaming me with thousands of people. He put me on his main stream and said, look, there's this guy going off on you right now. And the guy who was trying to get Linus to do it, who was the co-host, he and I ended up kind of coming to terms with one another and describing the situation and going through line by line and going through his experience, which quite frankly I had not watched from the very beginning. So I was not privy to all the reasons he was having frustration. I just saw him streaming something about Linux, and so I went in there and I thought, oh, this will be interesting, and immediately got attacked by everybody that was like, Linux sucks, it's only for old boomers and assholes who think the command line is the way to do things. And I got triggered. I got really, really triggered because all these people were putting all these conclusions in the chat. And frankly, I had not been around for the entire thing. So this guy, I forget his name. I'm so sorry I missed his name. Yeah. So he came in, and anyway, he came in and we talked about it, and people started making fun of it because we were like having a love fest and all this shit. And I'm like, no, that's not it. We just came to an agreement, and we legitimately left feeling better. Right, we left feeling better about it. But why? Why did we have to go through all of that? We had to go through all of that because both the people in the community posting the conclusions and the people that were just coming into it, including not just me. Boy, you should have heard some of the other people. You should have some of the other anonymous people that were in the Twitch that were Linux advocates. They were not pulling any punches, man. And so it was like ground zero Windows versus Linux in Linus Does Tech. It was in his Twitch chat. And that entire thing has been deleted, by the way. There's no record of it anywhere because it was freaking ugly. I mean, it's one of the ugliest moments that's ever happened in internet history that I've ever seen. This was Linus Does Tech, LTT. Linus, I don't know how he says his name. Anyway, so, this like the reason these people were on each other so bad is there was no desire for them to understand one another and to understand. They were all just making conclusions in these grandiose, large statements without any desire to understand how they had come to that conclusion. So that's the story. The story is, whether it be that or it be NeoVim is shit, I've said NeoVim is shit many times, and I actually I've had to back off of that statement and go through it, and I actually made a very detailed line-by-line analysis of NeoVim, I'm actually seeking to probably use NeoVim for many of the things that I do, because it does have some things that I might be interested in at some point. Honestly, in 2024, I got nothing bad to say about anybody who uses NeoVim. I may have said some horrible things in the past. They were never intended to be personal, but the way that my style has been, it was always, kind of, it was offensive. I would say people who use NeoVim are dumb, things like that. Those are all horrible things to say. They're not. And the guy that I work with every day at my job uses NeoVim every day. And I joke with him. I was like, oh, you use NeoVim, but it's not personal. Anyway, the bottom line is that by saying NeoVim is shit, NeoVim is bad is another example. And everybody's like, well, you should be able to use it. Where are you coming from when you say that? Right? When I say NeoVim is shit, it gets people pissed off. And then people, they come into my stream or they comment on me or they roast me and they say, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And they attack me because they feel personally offended. And they should. Because starting with a provocative, conclusion is always going to cause a fight. And unfortunately, the internet, where we reduce our number of words, limit the number of characters we have to 100 or something like that in Twitter or whatever. The reason Twitter is like so toxic and horrible is because nobody can formulate an argument on Twitter. No, they can't. So Twitter is full of conclusions. One little liner, one of these little clickbaity little one-liners. And so people get offended because it's designed, the platform is designed to be offended. And you compare it back to the old correspondence disagreements and debates from, I don't know, like for example, I read The Innovators by that famous, Walter Isaacson, the famous biographer who did the other biography on Steve Jobs and many other people. But The Innovators is the book he wanted to make, right? Well, it's got a great section in there about Ada Lovelace and her communication with Babbage and all this other great stuff. And I mean, these people were totally like clickbaiting each other, but they were doing it in written correspondence with like full letters that had to be transferred over mail. And then they had to be unfolded and they had to be read. And then they had to sit down and, get their little quill pen out. And then they had to, turn their gaslight on or whatever. And then they had to like write a response. And they had to think about the words that they wrote. Right? And a lot of that correspondence ended up becoming public. It's a good thing, right? So one of the greatest ones is, like if for religion, you like C.S. Lewis and all the apologetics that he used to do. Tolkien also. I mean, there are so many examples in history that we can learn from where people didn't have the ability to do a clickbaity one-liner on Twitter to just shoot out their conclusion that's going to offend everybody and maybe be provocative enough to get somebody to ask the question, where are they coming from? It was so offensive because it was so short and curt and sometimes deliberately offensive, so that there was really literally no desire to understand where they're coming from. They just want to put it out there. They just want to hit you with it. And that there is no way a civilized society can progress that way. There's just no way. So what we have to figure out how to do, and this is where Zettelkasten and blogs come in, right? This is where this is why I think things like Twitter and are a problem, because if you don't, and particularly now that we have these short form videos that are happening, we're starting to pay people, pare down what they have to say. Their title is not as clickbaity, and they have a little bit more time to say it, and maybe they can convey their emotion and their sarcasm and stuff better because it's video, which is another reason, by the way, that I am doing more of these videos instead of a little Zettelkasten, which may or may not have gotten me in trouble in the past because people were reading the words and they weren't hearing me. And, that's gotten me in trouble too at work because, I was reading the words in chat and I was overly defensive and I overreacted and blah, blah, blah. When in fact, you're like, well, dude, why are you freaking out? Let's talk. And it's like, dude, they had no intention of ever triggering me or me, them. The point is that if we're going to reach a place where we have a civilized society, we have to stop starting with conclusions. We have to start inviting people to do that. And now, am I still going to write these clickbaity titles to my YouTube? Yes, I am. And that might seem hypocritical. It is. It's absolutely hypocritical. And I got to tell you, this is one of the reasons I'm making this video, because I'm deliberately putting provocative, stupid, clickbaity titles in my YouTube with the intent that maybe it'll pull somebody in and they'll watch it. But if it is, as Internet Today or anybody would tell you, when you make a clickbaity title, you can look at the viewership. That video, the biggest video I ever made on YouTube, How I Hate Rust. Rust is Slow. That was a clickbaity title. Rust is slow in all the ways that matter. You know how many people actually watch past the first 5 minutes of that 40-minute video? Pretty much nobody. And at the end of the video, it says, look, I think Rust is great for blah, 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 blah. Nobody ever gets there. They don't get there because they're too tired. They're too tired. They just want to know. And in fact, there's people who actually troll on YouTube because they will make a video that's deliberately clickbaity and trolly at the beginning. And then their actual content comes at the end of the video. That's actually a whole thing. There's like an entire genre of YouTube videos of people making videos that are just trolling the commenters and everybody who just to see how stupid they are because they won't read the end. And they'll make comments based on the first 5 minutes of the video in there, and then the video is literally about how stupid all these people are because they didn't listen to the whole thing. And I'm not so I think that's entertaining. I'm not gonna lie, but do I think that that's the way that we should go? I don't think that that's how we should go. I think that the way to do this right is to use long form. It's to use long form, and the easiest way, in my opinion, to do long form is this: to hit record on a video while you're thinking about it, even if it's in the moment. I have mixed feelings about sharing passionate things in the moment because, on the one hand, when you share something, you get the emotion, right? So it makes it more interesting to watch because it's like fresh on your mind and you're able to speak with some emotion, and that emotion is actually going to dig up stuff out of your brain. It's going to make neural connections that are going to bring out a more watchable bit of content. But at the same time, if you're not careful or if you're drunk, you might end up saying something that you like can't take back, and then it's the opposite problem, right? So there is a middle path in there where being able to say what we think and shoot from the hip and is a little bit dangerous. And I do think that these long and short form videos are at least an opportunity to slow down. They're at least better than Twitter, right? They're better than an angry tweet that has no purpose other than to piss everybody off and vent what you're thinking. That never works, never helps anybody. It's just going to trigger other people. Hell, I spend like 5 minutes reading Twitter posts and I'm so inflamed after it that I'm unhealthy, I'm inflamed, I'm angry, and I don't want to do anything. So I would rather have have a community involvement like we have now, where people can actually chat in real time to me, and they can make live responses. And would it be even better if I actually sat down and I wrote a Zettelkasten about it, or I wrote a pen and ink letter of response, delineating my disagreement? Yeah, probably would be better. But it's 2024. Who does that? So I still feel like the solution. I don't like just stating problems in my videos. The solution to arguments that are because you started with a conclusion: Microsoft sucks, Linux on the desktop sucks, it's the year of Linux on the desktop, Linux is the best operating system ever. All of these conclusions that we have, right? The antidote to that is, in my opinion, long form video content or long form written content in the form of a blog. So my I don't know what the word is here, invitation, I suppose, is that, and when I say invite others, I'm also speaking to myself, right? Because I can say all of this in a video today and not do it tomorrow. And I've learned that about myself. And being a live streamer has really, made all of my weaknesses and my inability to follow my own advice really painfully obvious. Maybe for the better, I have, the people in my stream are constantly mirroring back to me what I say, and I'm like, you know what, you're right. And so I'm not pretending for a second that I do this right, or that I'm gonna not make a mistake tomorrow. But I am committing myself in this moment to keeping with long form, and my way of doing that is writing a Zettelkasten, and that can be deleted, but also these transcribable videos, YouTube videos, which all get transcribed and automatically get thrown into the Google algorithm for searching, which to me is a much more productive way. Google algorithm aside, it's a more productive way. Now, the real challenge is, and I'd appreciate your feedback in the comments here, is how do you do this and still play by the rules of the Google algorithm? that rewards rants and downvotes, and that. How do you do that? How do you do that? Right now, my strategy is to continue to put very silly titles, and then to hopefully make the content not silly. So we'll get you in the door at clickbaity, and I feel very dirty doing that. Many indie games around Linux. Oh, here we go. So it looks like we actually set up one of these conversations in the chat. Let me just read really quick. Yeah, there's the whole thing about Linux running gaming and stuff. It looks like I set up one already. So people are talking about Linux gaming, which is a very hot topic. It's one of the many of the top 10 hot topics. You could say Linux for gaming, editors, Rust versus Go. I mean, what's your window manager? What's your Unix OS distribution? These are things that people love to fight about, and I think it's fine. I think it's fine to argue and fight about it. Fight not being throwing punches. It's like, hey, let's have a beer and call each other morons for using a different editor than me. They don't mean it. I mean, if it's your buddy, I mean, it's not healthy. I know it's not healthy. Okay, I know it's not healthy to call your best friend a moron. I was raised at a different time. I'm sorry. I was raised in a different time. It's not healthy. You can disagree with them and say, no, that's totally stupid. Don't do that. But that only works with people that you've already built a relationship with. If you try to do that in a live stream or with people that you don't know, oh my God, God help you. Which I have learned the hard way. Agree to disagree. There you go. Yep. Hey, Gabe, how you doing? Rust versus anything. Yep. And I mean, I definitely have learned. It's sad about that, and I'll conclude with this. One of the reasons that I learned this the hard way was because I took the same dynamic I had, both with my peers, who I deeply respected, from the working world, from my generation, and the people that I mentored, one of whom is in my chat right now. And we would talk like this to each other, and for better or worse, and worse mostly. In fact, Whit, Gabe will probably remember Whit. We haven't seen Whit around lately, but Whit was one of the ones who called me more into my face. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Mr. Rob. Why are you doing that? In fact, Gabe one time is like, why are you using VS Code? That's totally stupid. You can't start up fast enough to use Vim. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And did I take offense? No. Why didn't I take offense? Because number one, they said it, even though they, called me a moron to my face in a kind of a fun way. I knew that they had my best interest at heart, and they were going to take me through their, why they, tell me why you think I'm a moron for doing that. I mean, that's the wrong way to say it. I get it. Okay. But, with somebody that I knew and respected calling me a moron to my face saying, oh, that's totally stupid. You're an idiot. Why are you doing that? This is the same person who, by the way, who took me aside and said, you remember that way that you taught us where you would have a mini project with like a kind of a silly thing, a silly meme to go with it? That was one of the best things you ever did for me. Same person who called me a moron said that. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Why? And that was a conclusion, by the way. That was somebody starting with a conclusion that was positive. It wasn't hitting me hard. It was a conclusion that I was like, okay. But just like the negative conclusions, I wanted the details. He's like, what do you mean? And and he says, well, I could pull up every time I hit a hurdle when I was coding or something, I would remember the meme. And that helped me identify the project. I go into the project and I can learn it. So he gave me the details of his conclusion. In that particular case, it was a positive conclusion. It made me feel really good. Kind of pumped up my ego. But I still didn't understand. I wasn't enlightened at all, right? So you can either be totally slapped in the face and called a moron without somebody giving you the reason that they think you're a moron, which you may actually end up agreeing with, which 9 times out of 10, I end up agreeing with him especially. So, don't... That does not work unless you have a very close personal relationship with the people you have. And the mistake that I made when I became a live streamer was that the people that were in my live stream community were as close to me as the people that I had built these personal relationships with. And that became a very... those conversations were so funny between us. And Gabe remembers them. And yeah, and sometimes we actually had an audience, right? Sometimes we'd have an audience. I had to actually take one of my TAs, Donovan, Gabe will know. I had to take one of my TAs. This is a person who I paid money to be in the room and help people learn because I was teaching, but I needed help doing the TA thing. And I actually paid them money. I paid them money to be in the room, and I had to take this extremely intelligent person and set him aside. And can't yeah, uh, I can kind of listen. Yeah, and so anyway, so Donovan, I had to take him aside because he was so used to contradicting me, and I had built this culture of challenging me or each other, right? Sometimes in a healthy way, sometimes in a not so healthy way. And so this person, Donovan, he would break into the middle of my thought while I was trying to teach somebody how to code something. He's like, Mr. Rob, that's wrong. You're doing it wrong. I mean, he literally from the back of the room, he was like, "No, you're totally doing it wrong." Imagine being in a college lecture and having one of the TAs like stop the lecturer in the front of the room and say, "You know what? Shut up. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong." And I'm like, I don't have time to debate this with you right now." Oh, hi. Are you watching TV now? Okay, just a second. I'm gonna go watch TV with my wife. But so the conclusion was I had to take this TA aside, who I deeply loved. I mean, the word love is not hyperbole. And I had to take him aside. I had to say, listen, I got no problem with you challenging me. You know I don't. But please don't do it in the middle of the class while we're, doing a thing you're going to throw off my group, unless I've made like a typo or a mistake or something like that. And I mean, he challenged a principle that I was teaching. I did not have an opportunity to like regroup, and it left the entire room kind of confused, right? And I mean, they weren't paying me to watch me debate out the principles that I was teaching in front of them. They were paying me to learn to code or to and so he's like, okay, yeah, I get it, okay. And I think that's an important reason for that. Sing a song before you watch TV. Yeah, that might be true. So I can't. I'm not gonna sing today. I'm sorry. No, it would be really fun. I have to go watch TV with my wife. Gotta have my priorities straight. I do thank you for being here though. So again, when possible, don't start with conclusions unless you're making a trolling video on purpose to get people in, and then maybe they're gonna listen to you. I feel like doing the trolling in the titles is okay in YouTube. You know why I feel like it's okay? I feel like it's okay because people are they can't know unless they watch the video, right? If you just do a trolling tweet, there's no follow-up explanation. So I could be wrong on this, but my current position is making a clickbaity title for YouTube that is a conclusion is better than making a clickbaity tweet, unless that tweet is linking to a blog post or a video that further explains your position. And I'm probably going to continue to do the clickbaity stuff. People may wonder why, clickbait is the thing. In fact, the title of this video will probably be "Clickbait Titles Are Shit," just because I want people to watch it. All right, that's it. Bye.